Donald Trump was caught on a hot mic making one of his classic jabs at Justin Trudeau. And this time, Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney turned it into his own moment. During a Gaza peace summit in Egypt, the exchange between Trump and Carney revealed just how much the power dynamics have shifted since Trudeau's departure. But to understand why this moment matters, we need to dive into the toxic relationship that Trump built with Trudeau over the past several years, and how Carney is already playing a completely different game. The hot mic moment happened during what should have been a solemn occasion, a summit celebrating the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. World leaders had gathered to sign the historic peace agreement after Hamas released the remaining 20 living Israeli hostages after more than 2 years of captivity.
Thanks for joining us. It's been a day of celebration for families in the Middle East. All 20 living hostages held by Hamas and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners held by Israel walked free Monday as part of a ceasefire, pausing 2 years of war that decimated the Gaza Strip and killed tens of thousands of Palestinians. Hamas also said Monday it will hand over the bodies of 4 of the 28 deceased captives, though it was not immediately clear when the rest would be released. Israel said it freed more than 1,900 Palestinian prisoners as part of the Gaza ceasefire deal. For 2 Israeli families, it's a day they've dreamt of, but also a day they knew that might not ever come. Families of released hostages, Eaton Horn and Omri Miran, described moments since loved ones returned.
He said that the last few months since the deal collapsed and Israel went back into fighting was harder. There was almost less food or not so much food. He lost a lot of weight, more than 40% of his body weight. He's just learning now about what happened in Israel on October 7th. And friends he knew that were murdered, and he had no clue how many people were kidnapped on that day.
Finally, he could embrace Ronnie and Alma, he could play with them, he could feel like he's a father again, and they could feel like they have a father figure in the household. Our focus now is...
The emotional scenes of families reuniting, the tight embraces and tears of joy marked a profound moment in Middle Eastern history. Yet even during this momentous diplomatic breakthrough, pure theater unfolded behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely. This is something that the internet was going wild about on Monday as we're all, eating Thanksgiving turkey, watching a bit of CFL football, watching the Jays lose, unfortunately. People are taking solace in a bit of fun happening between Donald Trump and Mark Carney. So while Trump was up on stage giving his speech about the peace plan that everyone had signed, and Mark Carney flew there to sign it. We can talk about that in a moment. But he starts calling out different leaders. It's funny. Trump at the beginning said, I'm not going to take too much time. All these leaders standing behind me. I don't want you to stand too long. And then he gave a really long speech. And as part of it, he's saying, oh, this leader's here, and thank you for this, and this leader's here, and thank you for that. And he calls out Kennedy, calls out Mark Carney, but he refers to him as president, not prime minister. He calls him President
Carney
from the stage. And so at the end of it, while the mic's still hot, after Trump had said, thank you, we're done, can the media please leave, Carney walks up to him and says, thanks for upgrading me to president. Now, for anyone who's going to get offended at that, I'm sorry, don't get offended. A president always outranks a prime minister. Even in countries that have both a president and a prime minister, the president is higher, such as you can look to Ireland, you can look to Israel, you can look to many different republics that have a prime minister and a president. The president is higher, often symbolic, much like our governor general. So he says, thank you for upgrading me to president. And they have a laugh about it. And then Trump leans in, says something to him. It's hard to hear, but the audio appears to say, at least I didn't call you governor. And then he slaps Carney on the shoulder and they have a laugh.
The exchange began when Trump mistakenly referred to Mark Carney as the President of Canada rather than Prime Minister during his speech. It was a simple protocol error, but what happened next revealed the new dynamics at play. After asking journalists to leave, but while still standing close to a microphone, Carney approached Trump with a lighthearted comment. "Thanks for upgrading me to president." Trump's response was immediate and telling. "At least I didn't say governor," he replied while playfully slapping Carney's shoulder. The two leaders shared a laugh, displaying what appeared to be genuine rapport, a stark contrast to the poisonous relationship Trump had cultivated with Justin Trudeau. The reference was unmistakable, a direct jab at former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, whom Trump had repeatedly mocked by calling him Governor Trudeau of the great state of Canada. To understand why this exchange matters, we need to rewind to the toxic relationship that developed between Trump and Trudeau. The animosity wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. Trump had spent months systematically humiliating Trudeau on the world stage, using a specific playbook designed to undermine the Canadian leader's authority. The governor insult wasn't random. It was a calculated attempt to diminish Trudeau's status as the leader of a sovereign nation. As John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, explained, Trump's repeated jokes about Canada becoming the 51st state were all an effort to humiliate Trudeau. This wasn't just political theater, it was psychological warfare. The pattern started during Trump's first term and escalated dramatically during the recent tariff disputes. Trump would regularly refer to Trudeau as governor instead of prime minister, seemingly as a way to undermine his position as the country's leader. The insult reached its peak in December 2024 when Trump wrote on Truth Social, "It was a pleasure to have dinner the other night with Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada. I look forward to seeing the governor again soon so that we may continue our in-depth talks on tariffs and trade, the results of which will be truly spectacular for all." The mockery wasn't subtle. Trump was essentially treating Canada like a wayward American state and Trudeau like a subordinate governor, rather than the leader of America's largest trading partner and closest ally. But the governor joke had deeper roots. According to Fox News reports, Trump had first made the suggestion that Canada become the 51st state during a dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Trudeau. When Trudeau warned that Trump's proposed 25% tariffs would kill the Canadian economy, Trump reportedly joked that if Canada couldn't survive without ripping off the United States, then maybe it should become the 51st state and Trudeau could become its governor. The comment reportedly caused nervous laughter around the table, but Trump doubled down, even suggesting that Canada could be two states, one conservative and one liberal. This wasn't just a one-off joke. According to Gerald Butts, Trudeau's former principal secretary, Trump had been using this 51st state line with Trudeau throughout his first term. It was a recurring humiliation that Trump deployed whenever he wanted to put Trudeau in his place. The psychological impact of this treatment on Trudeau and Canadian politics cannot be overstated. Trump's mockery contributed to a broader narrative that Trudeau was weak and ineffective on the international stage. The constant humiliation played into domestic Canadian politics, where Trudeau was already facing criticism for his handling of various issues. Trump's insults became ammunition for Trudeau's political opponents, who could point to the obvious lack of respect from America's president as evidence of failed leadership. The governor insults were particularly damaging because they struck at the heart of Canadian sovereignty and national pride. For a country that has always struggled to define itself in the shadow of its much larger neighbor, being treated like a subordinate state was a profound national embarrassment. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. Mark Carney's response to Trump's hot mic comment reveals a completely different approach to dealing with the American president. Instead of taking offense or responding defensively, Carney turned Trump's protocol mistake into his own moment. By saying, "Thanks for upgrading me to president," Carney demonstrated several things: confidence, humor, and most importantly, an understanding of how to handle Trump's personality. Carney didn't let Trump's subsequent governor reference rattle him. Instead, he laughed it off and moved on. This represents a fundamental shift in how Canada is approaching its relationship with Trump. Where Trudeau often seemed to take Trump's insults personally and respond with either indignation or nervous laughter, Carney appears to be treating Trump's behavior as manageable theater rather than personal attacks. During his recent White House visits, Trump has praised Carney as a world-class leader and remarked, "We have great love for each other. This is dramatically different from the relationship Trump had with Trudeau, which was characterized by public mockery and barely concealed contempt. The change isn't just about personalities, it's about strategy. Carney, a former Bank of England governor and Goldman Sachs executive, brings a different kind of gravitas to the role. He's dealt with powerful figures on the world stage throughout his career and isn't intimidated by Trump's bombast. More importantly, Carney seems to understand that the key to dealing with Trump is not to give him the emotional reaction he's looking for. The current trade negotiations highlight this new approach. Industry Minister Melanie Joly recently revealed that Canada is pursuing strategic deals on steel, aluminum, and energy projects first, while continuing to push for comprehensive agreements that protect Canadian workers. As she explained, they're maintaining a positive and respectful tone with the Trump administration while fighting for workers in the automotive sector.
So listen, I won't go into the details of the negotiation. What you heard from the Prime Minister is at this point is we're looking to have a deal on steel, aluminum, and also energy projects. So this is what is being worked on. But we know also that we need one on auto, and we need one on copper, and we need one also on lumber, because these are all tariff industries. So we're going into an approach where we are doing one at a time. But at the same time, we will continue to fight for our auto workers. That's clear.
I do want to, though, based on what you just said, in combination with what we heard from Howard Lutnick, ask you about the prospect of one. I understand that you don't want to, disclose the details of the negotiations, but do I take from what you just said and what we heard from the Prime Minister that there won't be any deal on autos anytime soon? Howard Lutnick was pretty much explicit that Canada, he said, should come second to the United States, that maybe they'll continue buying parts, but nothing really beyond that. Is that your understanding?
The negotiations remain challenging, with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick dampening expectations for a comprehensive auto deal, suggesting the U.S. might only continue buying parts from Canada rather than complete vehicles. The timing of this hot mic moment is also significant. It came just days after Trudeau announced his resignation as Liberal Party leader and Prime Minister, citing the need for the party to have a new leader to fight the next election. Trudeau's departure was partly attributed to his inability to effectively counter Trump's tariff threats and as declining popularity, partly due to his perceived weakness in dealing with the American president. Trump's final governor jab at the Egypt summit was essentially a victory lap, one last humiliation of a leader he had successfully undermined. But Carney's response suggests that the new Canadian leadership won't be playing by the same rules. The broader implications of this leadership change extend far beyond personal relationships. Canada is facing potentially devastating tariffs from the Trump administration, 25% on all Canadian goods unless Canada addresses Trump's concerns about border security and trade deficits. Under Trudeau, Canada's response strategy seemed reactive and defensive. The government would issue stern statements about sovereignty and threaten retaliatory tariffs, FFS, but these responses often seem to play into Trump's hands by making Trudeau appear weak and flustered. Carney's approach appears to be more strategic. Rather than getting drawn into Trump's psychological games, he's focusing on building a working relationship that can produce concrete results. The economic stakes couldn't be higher. Canada sends about 75% of its exports to the United States, making it incredibly vulnerable to American trade policy. The proposed tariffs would devastate the Canadian economy, potentially pushing it into recession and costing hundreds of thousands of jobs. But Trump's tariff threats aren't just about economics. They're about power and leverage. Trump has learned that he can use trade policy as a tool to extract concessions from other countries, and Canada has been one of his favorite targets. The challenge for any Canadian leader is how to respond to these threats without appearing weak or capitulating to American demands. Carney's background suggests he might be better equipped to handle this challenge than his predecessor. As a former central banker, he understands the complex economic relationships between countries and the real-world impacts of trade policy. He's also dealt with political pressure and market volatility throughout his career, giving him experience in managing high-stakes negotiations. Most importantly, his early interactions with Trump suggest he's found a way to maintain Canadian dignity while building a working relationship with the American president. The hot mic moment at the Egypt summit might seem like a small thing, but it represents a larger shift in how Canada is approaching its most important bilateral relationship. But Carney faces significant challenges that go beyond managing Trump's personality. The fundamental issues that led to the current crisis, trade deficits, border security, and economic dependence, haven't changed. Canada still needs to find ways to address American concerns about drug trafficking and illegal immigration across the northern border, even though these issues are relatively minor compared to problems at the southern border. The country also needs to address Trump's complaints about trade imbalances, which are largely based on his misunderstanding of how international trade works, but are nonetheless politically powerful in American politics. The hot mic exchange also reveals something important about Trump's psychology and negotiating style. Even at a solemn international summit focused on peace in the Middle East, Trump couldn't resist taking a shot at a political opponent. This compulsive need to dominate and humiliate others is a defining characteristic of Trump's leadership style, and it extends to his approach to international relations. Countries that want to deal effectively with Trump need to understand this psychology and develop strategies for managing it. Carney's lighthearted response to Trump's protocol mistake and subsequent governor joke suggests he understands this dynamic and has a plan for dealing with it. The timing of the Gaza summit also adds another layer of complexity to this story. The successful negotiation of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas represents a significant diplomatic achievement for the Trump administration. The fact that world leaders gathered in Egypt to celebrate this breakthrough demonstrates Trump's ability to project American power and influence on the global stage. For Carney, attending this summit and being treated as an equal partner in the peace process sends an important message about Canada's continued relevance in international affairs. The hot mic moment, rather than being an embarrassment, actually reinforced Carney's status as a leader who can hold his own with Trump. Looking ahead, the relationship between Trump and Carney will be crucial for both countries. Canada needs to find a way to avoid the devastating tariffs while maintaining its sovereignty and dignity. The United States needs Canadian cooperation on border security, energy supplies, and other shared challenges. The early signs suggest that Carney might be better positioned than Trudeau to navigate this complex relationship. His confidence, experience, and apparent understanding of Trump's psychology could make the difference between a trade war and a mutually beneficial partnership. The hot mic moment in Egypt might have seemed like just another example of Trump's casual cruelty toward foreign leaders. But Carney's response suggests that Canada's new leadership is ready to play a different game. Instead of being humiliated by Trump's psychological warfare, Carney turned a potential embarrassment into a moment of confidence and competence. Whether this approach will translate into better outcomes, MES for Canada remains to be seen, but it's clear that the dynamics of the Canada-US relationship have fundamentally changed. Trump's final governor joke might have been intended as one last humiliation of Canadian leadership, but Carney's response suggests that those days are over.